The Prada Symbole tote costs over $3,500, but if you have a sewing machine, you can make your very own version for a fraction of these costs. I'm going to walk you through the whole process today, and it's easier than you might think. If you're new here, hi, I am Chris, the owner of Simply Classic. I'm a pattern designer and bag making educator. One of my favorite things to do here on my channel is to help you recreate designer bags. The best designs are usually simple ones, and the Prada Symbole tote is no exception. It's a classy, boxy tote that was first released in 2022. It has two-rolled handles and an adjustable crossbody strap. What makes it unique is not so much the shape, but the distinctive triangle pattern that they use. This is what they call the Symbole print. Prada has been using the triangle motif in their bags for over 100 years, but this repeating triangle pattern was just introduced a few years ago. We actually carry an almost identical product at simplyclassic.net, and that's what I'll be using today. I'll tell you about it in just a minute, but first let's take a little closer look at this Prada bag. The Prada Symbole tote comes in three sizes: a mini, a small, and a large. Our dupe today is based on the middle size, which they call the small. The measurements of the small Symbole tote are 11 inches wide, 8.75 inches high, and 3.5 inches deep. So this is the version that we are making today. Our version is a little bit larger. It is 15 inches wide by 12 inches tall and 4 inches deep. So before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more bag making tutorials. I also go live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to talk about sewing and bag making, and I give away free patterns every week. So those live streams are always so much fun, and I hope you'll join us. So we're going to look at the materials we need to make this Prada dupe. I'll meet you at the table and we'll go over the pattern pieces. So we're going to go over all of the materials and pattern pieces we need to make this bag. Now, our geometric triangle, this is the brown and black. Obviously, you can get that on our website. And it's a little bit different than the Prada because the Prada is a woven jacquard fabric. This is like a faux leather, okay? It does have texture to it. You can kind of hear my fingers on that. And it's really beautiful. I mean, it's, you know, I like the vinyl versus the woven jacquard. I think that this is much prettier and certainly much more friendlier fabric because you can clean it, you can wipe it down, you know, it works well. So we have a front and back piece. You see they're exactly the same thing. Now the Prada bag, the black triangles are upside down. They're pointing down. So just keep that in mind as you're going through and making the bag. You want to make sure that essentially this is a directional fabric, and you want to make sure that everything is going in the same direction. So our front and back pieces are actually perfect squares. They're 14.5 by 14.5. Now I did cut stabilizer for the back, and I am actually using Decoville Heavy for this because I want my front and my back to be stiff. The stabilizer is a 1/2 inch smaller than the main part of the bag, so it's 13.5 by 13.5. And you can see I actually drew 1/2 inch lines because we're going to be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I drew 1/2 inch lines all the way around the piece and then placed my stabilizer in there. I want to make sure I do not stitch on my stabilizer at all, especially since this is Decoville Heavy. And by drawing those lines, I'm making sure that my piece fits in. So basically what that means is that if I cut this piece 13 by 13 and it's a little bit long over one edge, I'm just going to trim it back a little bit. You'd rather be slightly too small, like you can see here, about 1/8 of an inch off, 1/8 of an inch smaller than too large. So we have those two pieces, the front and the back. So we have two side pieces. Again, the triangles are pointing down, and you can see my seam allowances are actually cut into the bag. So I left a 1/2 inch at the bottom and at the top so everything matches up. The sides are 6.5 wide by 13.5 tall. The stabilizer for this is 5.5 wide by 12.5 tall. So basically you're leaving all of the stabilizer out of the seam allowances. I have the 2 pieces, obviously we need 2 sides. We then have our handle pieces. Now, on the Prada bag, the triangles are going in the same direction down the piece, which means that it's pieced in the center. So basically we have the center of our handle here, and the black triangles are going downward on each side. If you don't make that center seam and go ahead and stitch it, then your triangles are going to go up on one side of the handle, and then it's going to turn around and come down on the other side of the handle. This is the main reason why I'm sitting at my industrial machine, is because we're going to stitch this, and then we're going to do kind of a rolled handle. And you know, if you don't have an industrial, what I would say is just do a regular handle, maybe do one in a solid color, like a solid black, then a domestic machine will handle this fine. My Burnett would do this no problem. It's just because of these handles, I want to make sure we get through the thickness. This isn't a super thick faux, but I just want to be safe. Now, when you cut your handle pieces out, you're going to cut 2 of them that are 6 by 15.5. Okay, so 6 by 15.5. Then you find the center and you cut them in half. Okay, so once you cut it in half, you're going to turn and you're going to go ahead and stitch this together. Now, you notice that when I cut this handle piece, I made sure to cut not on one of my lines, a 1/2 inch away from my line. And that's going to give me space for a seam allowance, so that when I stitch these together, I can pattern match it exactly, and these triangles will match up perfectly. And we're actually doing a 3-inch handle here because we're going to roll it again. So these are 6 instead of 4. Again, if you don't have an industrial machine, you can do this on a Burnett, an HD9, anything like that. And I would just do a 4 by 15.5. So just do a regular handle. So I have essentially 4 handle pieces, but it was 2 handles that I started with, and then I cut it in half. One thing I want to mention on when you cut your front and your back pieces and your side pieces, and I'm going to grab this one more time, is I did the same thing. I didn't cut on the line. I cut a 1/2 inch away from the line at both the top and the bottom. The pattern piece measurements work out perfectly for that if you're using our faux. And that way, when you stitch this at a 1/2 inch, you're going to exactly end at the point of a triangle on both sides. Same thing with the side pieces. You'll see I have a 1/2 inch here. You see I have about a 1/2 inch here, so that when I go ahead and fold these back, it's going to end on the either the point or the base of the triangle. So a couple fussy cutting tips for you there. So we are then going to do the upper linings. Now I'm doing my upper linings in a solid black, just like they do with the Prada bag. And I basically have 2 upper linings for the main part of the bag, and I have 2 upper linings for the sides. The sides are 6.5 by 4, so 6.5 by 4. Stabilizer is 5.5 by 3, and you center that on there. Upper lining for the front and back is 14.5 by 4. Then the stabilizer is cut 13.5 by 3. And you go ahead and stick that on. Now this is a wider than normal upper lining. Again, we're copying the Prada bag. We want to make sure that we use the same proportions, the same features, and that's one of the things on their bag is their upper lining is larger. Our binding, we're going to need 2 strips, and it's going to be 1 inch by 30 inches. And I'm doing it out of the black textured. Great thing to do it with because it's super thin. So the next thing that we have is our lining piece. And our lining piece, this is our brown chambray. It's by Tote. And I used our classic fuse woven interfacing on the back. So what I do usually is I fuse all my I fuse all the lining, and then I cut the lining pieces, and that way everything is nice and straight and even, and I'm not having to try to fuse interfacing a cut interfacing piece to a cut piece of fabric. So my lining piece is 14.5 this way, the short way, 14.5 by 21.5 this way. And you're just cutting one large piece. We then have our slip pocket piece, and we have an opportunity for a pretty big slip pocket. So my slip pocket is 10 by 16. So when we fold this in half, it is going to roughly be a 10 by 8-inch pocket. It's going to be nice and big. We can divide it and put all kinds of cool stuff in it. We have two lining sides, and our lining sides obviously have the same cutout at the bottom as the sides do. 1-inch cutouts in the bottom corners. And this is 6.5 wide, and it's 10.25 tall. And of course, I have woven interfacing on the back. Now, the Prada bag, as I mentioned, has no closure, no snap, no zipper, nothing. We're going to copy that because that's what Prada did, so that's what we're going to do. So make sure you check out our geometric triangles on our website. We do have other colors available. We have this gray and black, really pretty. We also have olive and black, which Prada definitely uses this color a lot. And then we have our black and white, in addition, of course, to the brown and black that we are using today. So we here have some great color options. Also, make sure you check out our linings. All of the chambrays are very similar look to linen. They're great to work with. Classic fuse, of course, on the back of all this, which is available on the website as well. And then we have our textured, and the textured black would pretty much go with all of these. You know, this black and white is really a classic. I've done a bag in this already. We can link that video below. That's another free pattern, but you know, it's just, they're all amazing. Also, make sure you check out the link down below to get the cutting chart for this bag. So we're going to start out by working on our handle. And you can make these handles as long or as short as you want. We're kind of copying the drop of the medium-sized bag for the Prada tote. And when you cut your handle, it's going to look like this. You're going to cut it in half. And notice that when I cut it in half, cutting it right in the middle of some of these triangles. And then we're going to turn it, and we are going to attach it this way. So the black triangles are pointing down or away from each other. Let's say that. Now, the way that I typically pattern match, and I learned this a long time ago when I was working with window treatments and draperies and slip covers and all that kind of fun stuff, is I actually put a piece of double-sided tape down. Then I would take my other piece and I would iron it. And of course we can't iron because this is faux, but I am going to go ahead and finger press this in place. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze this, to finger press it down, and then peel the backing off, and then match your pattern exactly. So I'm going to match up these triangles. Now you notice when I do that, you can see that my two pieces are off a little bit. That's not important. What is important is that my pattern matches. So from there, I want to stitch along my fold. So I'm going to take a pencil and a ruler and just mark that fold so that I know where it is, because sometimes I kind of lose it when I stitch. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch. Okay, from here, I do want to open up this seam allowance. So I'm going to unstick that tape. And I'm going to, on the Prada bag, there's no top stitching here, so I don't want to top stitch, but I am going to put some double-sided tape to hold these seams down. So I'm just going to put it right here in the seam allowance. I just stuck that tape back down. Let me open that back up. There we go. Go ahead and press that down. And then do the same thing on this side. Okay, so now that's pressed down. Now the other thing we want to do is just be, you can either cut or just be aware that the piece is a little bit cattywampus. We want to measure in, we want to measure the center. This is 6 inches, so it would be 3 from each side. But if we cut this off, it's now going to no longer be 3. It'll be basically 5 and 5/8. So what I suggest you do is to go ahead and draw your line down the center like you normally would. And this is not unusual when you pattern match and you flip pieces. And I'm going to draw a line over here. So basically I'm drawing a line from all 4 corners. So I'm going to have several lines. And I want to make sure that when I fold my pieces over, they kind of line up with, we want to choose one line. We want to choose one center point and say, okay, that's it. So basically it's this top line and this bottom line together, like kind of right in the middle of that. I hope that kind of makes sense. It's just a part of pattern matching. So I'm going to draw that line down, make it a little darker, go all the way down. And now this is what I want to fold over. So put the double-sided tape. Now these handles are pretty short. I do understand that. So if you want them longer, no problem, just cut your pieces longer. Just make sure you cut them in the middle of a triangle so that you'll have the opportunity to do that pattern matching. And then we're going to fold this up. Now, I'm going to have a pretty big space here because when I fold this side up, I don't want to go all the way to the line. I want to stay just shy of it, of course. And see this side, how it's much shorter there? That's okay. I'm not going to worry about that. It's going to be on the inside. Nobody's going to see it. What I do want to make sure of, though, is that my piece ends up measuring about 3 inches when everything's folded. So I am going to make sure that happens. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to fold again. And, you know, if you wanted to cut some of this out, you certainly could. I'm just going to do that here in the seam because we do have a pretty big piece of bulk here. We actually are going to have several layers of faux. Okay, so now I'm going to fold this again and wonder clip. Now when we stick, this is actually going in the top of the bag. Okay, so it's no connectors here, no D-rings or anything like that. So when we put this in the top of the bag, we don't want to put just this tiny little 1/2 inch in there. We're going to want to put a good 1.5 inches. So I'm going to basically put 1 triangle plus that 1 little 1/2 piece. So my top of my bag will be here. So what that means is that I don't want the rolled part, when we actually roll this again, to go all the way to the top. I want to leave some space. So I'm going to leave about two triangle widths. So altogether what that measures, I believe, is 3 inches. Yes, right at 3 inches. So I'm going to stitch from this solid triangle down each side. Okay, same thing, down each side. I'm not going to stitch in the middle. And I'm using about a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is a very forgiving fabric. I'm going to do a little back stitch here. If it was a solid, I would probably pull my threads through, but on this fabric, you're not going to be able to see it, especially since we're using black. I'm going to repeat that on the other side. From here, we need to roll the rest of the handle, and this is where it gets really bulky, and this is why I'm sitting at this machine. So I want to take and roll this one more time and wonder clip it in place. Now, what's going to happen is that the center part, which is right here, is going to want to kind of, you can see how it's kind of bubbling on me. That is because that fabric has nowhere to go. So that's the reason why a lot of times when we do handles, we leave a space in the center, is so that it takes up this extra here. You're just going to have to kind of work that extra in. And you can even put a little bit of double-sided tape if you want in between the 2 layers to make sure they don't move. Okay, so we are going to start stitching right where we left off. And we're going to come all the way up, and I'm actually going to stop and do like a little stitch, come up as much as I can and do a little back stitch here. Then I'm going to turn it around and come the other way. And the reason why is because this bulk is so much right here. My machine is either going to, the presser foot will either eat up the faux, which we don't want it to do, or it's just going to have a problem. There's a lot of bulk here. I mean, essentially we have 2, 4, 6, 8, we have 12 layers of faux right there. So I'll start here, go to the center, and then repeat. Now, if you were using leather, obviously you would do this much different. You wouldn't have all this bulk. So I'm going to do a little back stitch right there. And then I'm going to repeat that same thing on the other side. Also, if you're using fabric, you're not going to have all that bulk. But an easy fix is to maybe use some solid black, do regular handles, and you are good to go. So we now have our rolled handle. Our triangles are going in the same direction, and we will put that in our bag just like that. So I'm going to repeat that same process for the other handle. So I have both handles completed. I'm going to set those aside for just a minute, and we're going to work on our sides. So take your side pieces and take your side upper lining pieces. And we're just going to stitch these together We're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to turn it and we're going to top stitch. So I'm going to make sure my seam allowance is facing the upper lining, and I'm going to top stitch on my upper lining. From here, go ahead and take your side pieces. We're going to put them right sides together. And we're going to clip the top. I'm going to clip the top. We're going to stitch the top using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to flip it wrong sides together and top stitch. So when you flip, you want to make sure that you are pulling this down nice and tight. From the front, you don't want to see any of the black peeking out. The good thing is that the triangles are black, so if if it's not exactly right, it'll just look like part of the back of the triangle. But we are going to top stitch. Okay, from here, we need to go ahead and box our corners. And what we're going to do is go ahead and stitch right sides together on these corners. Okay, so right sides together. And I'm stitching using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. And then we're also going to box our lining. So go ahead and fold it, 1/2 inch seam allowance. And the other side the same way, fold it, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and cut these back to about 1/4 of an inch. Now you want to go ahead and turn. Go ahead and wonder clip. And then you're going to turn this right side out. And actually, we're going to do just the opposite. We're going to turn the lining right side out. And we're going to fit that lining right around the main part of our bag. And what this is going to do is give us some depth to stitch, because if we don't have that bit of depth, what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to get our presser foot in here to stitch. So we need this depth. So just go ahead and make sure your piece is laying nice and flat. stitch using 1/8 of an inch and then come around. So all that did was baste those two pieces together. So now when we put the bag together, we won't have any problems. And it gave us the depth we need so that we can get that kind of curved edge like the Louis Vuitton bag. So I'm going to repeat that process to do this other one, other side. So both side pieces are completed. We're going to go ahead and set those aside. And we need to work on our lining. So the first thing I want to do is to take my, let's do the slip pocket first. Let's take my slip pocket. I'm going to stitch those together using, about 1/2 inch seam allowance. To turn this, we're just going to fold this along our stitch line. We're going to stick our finger and thumb in there to hold that down, and then we're just going to turn it and put a, like my tool here, my OESD turning tool, and I'm just going to kind of poke that out. You have a perfect corner with no cutting. Now, one thing I did forget to mention in the beginning is to cut a piece of upper lining accent so that you can go ahead and close this pocket. So you want to cut that 1x10. You can go ahead and iron this down to get it nice and flat, and then we're going to baste the top. Now that I have it all pressed, I'm going to baste it close. And I do this just because when I put the upper lining on, since it has double-sided tape on it, it tends to want to open this up, and helps it all stay down nice and flat. Off just a tad. I'm just going to cut that off and put some double-sided tape on my upper lining. And then I'm just going to center the top of the pocket on this upper lining, fold it over, and then we will top stitch. Now, Prada does not say anything about having a key fob in their bags. And if you've ever had a key fob and then you didn't have a key fob, you're probably going to want a key fob. I know I do. So I'm going to go ahead and add a key fob to my bag. If you want to do that, you're going to cut a piece that's 1.25 inches by either 10 or 12, just depending on how long you want it. I think I cut mine 10. And that will, we'll put a swivel clasp on it, and that will just give me a place to put my key. And even though we don't use keys the way we used to, meaning we don't necessarily need keys to start our vehicles and unlock and all that, I still like to have my key fob on there, and that way I always know where it is. Easy to get to, easy to find. Okay, so we're going to stitch using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then once you do that, you can just cut off these little wings here, make it nice and even. And that is a slip pocket the easy way. So we're going to put that aside for just a minute. And we're going to take our main lining piece and we're going to put our upper linings on that. So we're going to clip one upper lining to one side. We're going to do this exactly the same way we did the upper lining on the side pieces. We're going to stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, then turn and top stitch. Now, one of the things that I found interesting in the Prada bag is that the zipper for the zipper pocket was on the upper lining instead of having a separate zipper overlay. So we're going to try that today. So that's why I'm putting these on first. So you can stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to make sure that the upper lining is, or the seam allowance is going towards the upper lining. And we're going to top stitch on the upper lining. Now this is going to put our zipper pretty close to the top of our bag, but again, we're going to try it, see if we like it or not, see what happens. If you don't want to do this, you could certainly do a zipper pocket the regular way by adding a zipper overlay and then going ahead and putting the pocket in. And then we're going to flip and stitch. Now on one side of the bag, we're going to put our slip pocket. Now I also noticed on the Prada bag that the top of the slip pocket goes onto the upper lining. So we're going to try that too. Because again, this upper lining is thicker, taller than normal. So I am going to come down. We know we're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to come down 2.5 inches and I'm going to place my slip pocket. And I want to make sure it's centered. So let me find the center of my lining, or excuse me, yeah, my lining, my upper lining. So 2.5. I'm going to use my sew type magnets to hold this on. And we have a coupon code for you. If you would like to use these or get these, we have it on our resource page on our website, and I'm sure we also have it linked below in the video. And actually, they're changing their discount to 10% here shortly. So if you, right now it's 15. So if you want to get these, you probably need to go ahead and get them before that changes. I think it changes, I think it's sometime in November. Okay, this is a big pocket. So you can divide it if you want. It's also deep. So kind of keep that in mind as you stitch this. I think this time I am not going to divide this. I usually do, but I'm going to kind of be a rebel here and not divide this one. So all I'm going to do is stitch down, over, and up. Pockets are very customizable. You can do them however you would like. This is totally optional. I am going to put a few rivets here. You certainly do not have to do that. So a little fun fact, when I went to Sacramento to teach classes, I brought my hole punch and it got confiscated at the airport. So I have a new hole punch. I had to go out and get one when I got home. So anyway, don't ever pack a hole punch in the carry-on. My husband and I talked about it, and we thought, oh, is it gonna get confiscated? I don't know. We kind of went back and forth, and I decided to chance it, and I was wrong. So, and interestingly, it wasn't because of the hole punches, which I thought was gonna be the reason. It was because the entire piece could not be more than 7 inches long, and mine was 9. So anyway, if you do ever fly, make sure you do not bring your hole or your punch with you on the plane. You got to pack it in your check-in baggage, which I was trying not to check any bags, which is why I did that. So anyway. Fun fact. So I'm going to set these rivets and then we'll move on to our zipper pocket. So we are going to put our zipper pocket on this side. We're going to cut, again, let's find our center. And on the back, I'm going to do this on the back. I'm going to draw a box. Again, I'm going to come down 2.5 inches. Let's see, this is a 9-inch. That is 9 inches long, and it is 2.5 inches down. Then I'm going to go and draw another line. I'm going to do it about 3/8 of an inch from my first line. And then you can go ahead and close them. And I'm going to go to my cutting table and I'm going to cut this box out. So what's going to happen is once I cut this box out, we're going to actually put the zipper on this side of the box. I mean, obviously, you know, on the upper lining. Again, different, but we're going to do what we can to make this as much like the Prada bag as possible. So I'll go cut that out and we'll continue. There's my hole for my zipper opening. I'm going to go ahead and put this aside for just a second. And you're going to take your zipper pockets. Now, our brown and bronze, or excuse me, our black and bronze zipper tape really matches well with this. You get this on our website. It's in 3-yard packs, and I actually cut this zipper 10 inches because my pocket pieces are 10 inches. So I'm going to place the wrong side of my zipper against the right side of one of my pocket pieces. You can use Wonder Clips here. I love using double-sided tape because it prevents the zipper from shifting. And, you know, some days zippers just want to shift. And sometimes that really helps me prevent a wavy zipper because that happens to all of us. So I'm just going to place the wrong side of the zipper against the right side of the pocket piece. Don't pull, okay, just lay it down. You can lightly run your finger across to make sure the double-sided tape is on there, but don't push it because you're stretching it. We don't want a wavy zipper. I'm going to stitch this using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or basically just putting the edge of my presser foot right against the teeth. And honestly, my domestic machine, my Burnett, does this a lot better than this industrial does. That's just kind of part of the reason why I have both, for sure. And so if I was doing this not on a video, I would take this to my domestic machine and I would stitch it. But because I am doing it on a video to help save moving things around, I'm just going to stitch it here. So basically it's a do as I say, not as I do thing. So now you want to flip this so your zipper tape is flat, okay? And you're going to stitch your zipper tape down. So what I'm doing is I'm stitching between my my existing stitch line and the edge of the zipper tape, just to hold that down. And for whatever reason, this is what this machine really hates, this part. But it's not made for this, understand that. I know I've been asked before, how does your industrial machine stitch the cotton? Well, it really doesn't do it very well. Okay, we're going to repeat on this piece. And you can see my stabilizer doesn't go all the way to the end. I have some like scrap pieces of stabilizer. I didn't want to have to cut a whole new piece, so I'm just making this work. And nobody but you will ever know. So I'm taking the wrong side of the other side of the zipper, putting it against the right side of the pocket, and matching up the edges. Again, don't pull. You just want it to sit down on the pocket. And then we're going to stitch. And then once again, we're going to make sure that the zipper tape is laying nice and flat. And we are going to top stitch that down. So now we see the right side of our zipper with the wrong side of our pockets, and the wrong side of the zipper with the right side of our pockets. Go ahead and install a zipper pull. And even before I do that, I'm going to put some double-sided tape on the edge of the zipper tape. And this will hold it in place as we center our zipper. So let me do that first. That on. Okay. Now you can either use a zipper jig to do this, or you can do it by hand. Main thing you want to make sure of is that your teeth match up here. And now we're going to take our lining and we are going to peel the backing off this tape and make sure this is centered. Let's see, I want to go in this way. You can have your zipper closing in any direction you want. There's no rule there. You know, typically I have it closing towards the left, but not always. Sometimes it goes towards the right, and sometimes that's on purpose and sometimes it's not. So either way you like. And then we're just going to center the zipper, not only up to top to bottom, but right to left as well. Center that right inside this hole. And the good thing about the double-sided tape, you can do a little bit of adjusting if you need to. Let's peel it up, move it. Sometimes the zipper pull gets in the way, just kind of move that out of your way. I know sometimes on or a lot of times on bag makers work, when we ask you questions, random questions, to see, to win patterns. If you're watching replays, and I think one of the things we watched was asked is, what is your least favorite part of sewing? My least favorite part is centering the zippers in the zipper opening. Isn't that silly? But it's the truth. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stitch around this box. Make sure your pocket's open in the back. And what that means is you want it open. Don't close this yet, or you're going to stitch your pocket closed. So I'm going to do this using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I need one more stitch. So we have got this stitched on now. So we're going to turn this over. We're going to take this top part of the pocket, fold it down to the bottom part, wonder clip it in place. We're going to leave the bottom of this pocket open so that we can finish up our lining after we turn it. So whenever you do a pocket this way, you always have extra at the bottom. Just go ahead and cut it off. It should be about 1 1/4 inches, but it doesn't matter what it is, just cut it off. And then we're going to stitch from the front side. So turn this so you have the right side up, pull this back, and then you're going to stitch, top stitch here all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you top stitch really well. Or not top stitch, back stitch. And then we're going to turn this and do exactly the same thing, starting from the bottom. I'm going to move my zipper pull over. I'm a little tight on my extra here. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get next to it, so I'm just going to stitch up as far as I can and stop. Yeah. I was able to get it. If you ever have that situation, just stitch as far as you can and stop. It's not like you're going to have somebody opening this up and trying to reach way right here. I mean, you'll be fine. You know, this, if this right here isn't stitched on the pocket, it's okay. All right, so that is our lining. Interestingly, as a side note, you could certainly put another slip pocket on this side, or a sunglasses pocket, or credit card slots, or something like that. You got plenty of room to do that. But we are copying the Prada bag as much as possible, so I am just going to set this aside. And we're going to take our front and back pieces. Now we're going to do that pattern match thing on this as well. So remember, triangles, black triangles are going down. So we want these two pieces to have the black triangles facing each other, and this is going to be our bottom seam. Again, you can see that when I cut this, I left about 1/2 inch on each side, so I cut in the middle of the triangle. And I'm going to put some double-sided tape on one side, fold this over. Now the good thing about this is you can see that we've got some decabill on the bottom of this. So as I fold this, it's going to give me a nice crisp edge. Now in this case, unlike the handles, the top of the triangles are going to be the ones that are meeting. Okay. So essentially it's going to go just like this, and you'll match up. And then your triangles will be going down on both sides. So let's get some of that double-sided tape. Which, if I can find the end, there it is. Well, remove this. Now, I'm not going to need to draw a line on the back because I already know I need to stitch right next to my stabilizer. I had already placed the stabilizer so that when this is folded over, I see the very tip of my triangles. So I just want to make sure I stitch on the edge of the stabilizer, not on the stabilizer, but just right next to it. So make sure my points are matching up. Okay, then I'm going to turn this and stitch next to the stabilizer. So now when we open up, we have everything matching up. So I'm going to open up the seam allowance just like I did on the handle. And we're going to put double-sided tape. We could put double-sided tape to hold it down. This does have a top stitch on it, so it's up to you if you want to do that. I'm actually going to top stitch it, but I do want to remove this tape because if I don't, it's going to get caught on my bed of my machine and it's going to be hard to stitch. It's not going to want to stitch. So let me just take a second to remove this. And again, we had put it on to help us match that pattern. So now from the right side, I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to make sure that the seam allowance is going in the correct direction, meaning I'm going to open the seam allowance and then I'm going to top stitch on each side. So now that that's top stitched, you can put feet on if you want to. Now, interestingly, the Prada bag has no purse feet. And so this is a place or a point that you could certainly add purse feet. I would probably recommend you do so. It's a big bag. And it's interesting to me that as much as you spend on these bags sometimes, the things that are not included, like key fobs and purse feet. But anyway, I am not going to put purse feet on because Prada did not put purse feet on. So we're just going to bypass that. Okay, once you've top stitched this seam here, we need to go ahead and attach the handles. So you want to find the center of your bag horizontally. And I'm realizing that the center of my bag, I was so concerned about making sure that I fussy cut it, the pattern this way. I didn't fussy cut it this way. So the center of my bag is not in the center of one of the triangles. It's off. I'm not going to worry about that. If I did it again, I would just make sure that it's centered. So we're just going to go with it. And we need to take our handle, one of our handles, and we are going to measure and go ahead and clip this on. Now, when we do it, we want to make sure, like I mentioned before, that the top of the bag is lined up with this line right here, which is about a 1/2 inch. So we're not going to put the top of the bag even with the edge of the handle. We're going to go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of extra space. In addition, of course, when we turn this, we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. When we turn it, it's going to take up more of this, but I just want to make sure I have plenty of space. So I'm going to measure over. Go ahead and kind of do a quick visual here. We're going to measure over 2 inches from my center point, 2 inches to the right and 2 inches to the left. And I'm going to make a mark with a silver marking pen, which of course we sell on the site. A lot of you know because a lot of you have purchased them. They're fantastic. So I'm just going to line this up and make a mark 2 inches in this direction, and then 2 inches in the other direction. Okay, so you can see these marks, and now what I want to do is line up the outside of the hand, or the inside of the handle against the mark here. So I'm not going to center it, I'm not going to put it on the inside, I'm going to put it on the outside, and I'm going to make sure again that I go ahead and put it even with this first line, so it's about a 1/2 inch down. So I'm going to go ahead and wonder clip it in place. And we're going to just go ahead and base these on. I'm going to use about a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, as long as it's less than half, because when we stitch the lining on, we're going to use a 1/2 inch. Okay, so once that's done, of course you want to put right sides together, so I'm going to put it so that the open side is towards the front and or back, and that the closed side is facing up. We will go ahead and stitch this on. And then I will move down and stitch the other side on as well. So I'm going to repeat that to attach the other handle to the opposite side. Once the handles are attached to each side, okay, we're going to take our lining piece and we're going to put it face down on top of our main piece. Now, of course, we want to make sure our handles are flipped down, and we are going to wonder clip this side. And if you see holes in my project, it's because I put all this together, forgot to put my handles on, I'm taking it apart, and now I'm having to put it all back together. So it happens. So we're going to stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance to get this on. So when we go to do the other side, it's going to look like the lining's too short, okay, but it's not. You want to go ahead and pull it so that it matches up, and we're going to wonder clip, and then we're going to stitch using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now that that's done, do not clip these spots where your handles are sticking out. Okay, we did that on purpose. We want that to stay. We're going to leave it just the way it is. We're going to go ahead and turn. And then we are going to top stitch along this top edge. Now, again, I'm going to try to make sure I get in the same holes because I've already done this once. Oops. And going to need to do it again. So hopefully I will get as close as I can. This good thing about this faux leather, both the solid I'm using and this is the textured, so that does help if you make a mistake like I just did and forget to do something and have to take it apart. It is somewhat forgiving. You can see the holes, but they're not as apparent as if it's a solid. So right here, as I come down off of where this actual strap is, I'm probably going to have a little bit of an issue with my foot dragging. So I'm going to, because I don't want to mess up my faux, so I'm going to take and just put a piece of faux leather underneath the back side of my foot so that if it does drag, it's not going to ruin my project. I'm going to do the same thing here. All right, that turned out pretty good. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to go ahead and wonder clip this in place and top stitch. So I do see some of my holes up here, but it's not super apparent. We're just going to let it be and not try to do anything more to fix it. Okay, now when you go to try to lay this flat, it's not really going to lay flat necessarily to baste these sides together because our lining is slightly smaller than our main part of our bag. Because when we turn this like this, we don't want to have a baggy lining and we want to make sure it takes up really nice. So you can see when I lay this down, see I have a little clip here. So you're just going to have to kind of work it in. It's not difficult to do. You just kind of roll it as you stitch and you'll see what I mean. Just want to make sure you line up your centers here. Of course, the center of the lining, you can find the center and then match up with the center of the bottom. And you can see, even as this is sitting on the table, see how you've got like gaps here? That's okay, just kind of push them down. And as you stitch, it will take up in the seam. It'll work. And you'll see that I'm gonna fold this, you know, roll it and fold it to help that ease in. So I'm just gonna put a few more wonder clips. And then we will go ahead and stitch. Now I'm just stitching this together so that it's easier when I put my sides on. So you just want to use about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here. So what I'm going to do is kind of roll this side up now as I unroll this one. And then when you're through, you should have a side that is stitched with no tucks or pleats in your lining. And you can see when you try to lay this flat, you've got a little bit of air in there, but that's okay. Again, we want that to happen. So we're gonna go ahead and do the other side. So I'm just gonna kind of roll this up. And now you can see how everything is nice and smooth, no tucks, no pleats, but yet when we do this, we're not going to have any gapping or linings that look like they're too baggy. And now that that's done, we want to go ahead and put everything together. So find the center of the bottom of your side piece, and we are going to put this wrong sides together against, when I say wrong sides, lining sides together. We're going to match up the center of the side piece with the center of the bottom. Go ahead and wonder clip. You want to make sure you wonder clip all the way to the little pleated edge. Oh. Okay, once you do that, go ahead and take one of the sides and pull it up. You're going to make sure your tops match. So what I'm going to do is put a wonder clip right about in this area, and then go ahead and clip all the way down. Your upper lining should come pretty close to matching here on the side. And if you want a key fob, you want to make sure that you go ahead and put the key fob in this seam. Or the other side, either way. So I'm going to clip. And I'm just going to make sure that these sides match as closely as possible. Okay, so this is what we're going to have. So you see we have plenty of space here to get our presser foot in to go all the way around. Now, if you have a cylinder arm machine, this is really a great time to use it, and you will end up stitching it this way, you know, putting this side in first and going all the way around. Whenever you're doing anything like this, wrong sides together, and you have this kind of edge, it can be a bit difficult to get around on a flatbed. Okay, I'm sitting here at the cylinder arm. We're going to go ahead and use it to go ahead and stitch the sides on. So I have both of them clipped on, and we're going to, the cylinder arm makes this a lot easier. I do have my edge guide here. I know that my foot. The edge of my foot is 1/4 of an inch. That's what we want to use. But I'm going to go ahead and drop this down as well so that if I do get off a little bit, it'll help me. Now, as you stitch this, you're going to, if you have a cylinder arm, you're going to kind of come down around. You know, sometimes my table gets in the way a little bit. I have to kind of smush it down and kind of make it work. And then you're going to come around this side. If you want to staple or do something, use some double-sided tape here in the curve, you can certainly do that to make sure that it stays put so it doesn't shift on you. Okay, I'm going to try it without. We're going to see how it goes, and we will get started. And this is where sometimes I have to kind of shift the bag. A lot of times these cylinder arm machines come as a pedestal machine, and that would make a larger bag like this easier. I'm just going to kind of shift it around. Make sure I am still on track. So you can see here how that worked out. Let me go ahead and take these off as well. And that just sewed on beautifully. Everything's matched up, and our next step will be putting the binding on. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and stitch the other side exactly the same way. If you're new to using an industrial machine, I always find I can keep my project much straighter and it comes out much better if I make sure one hand is behind and one hand is below to hold it, or in front, like behind and in front of, to hold it nice and steady. Go ahead and kind of smush this down, bring it over. And so now you can see how great this looks. I actually decided not to put a bag tag on here since my pattern's not centered. I thought a bag tag would just kind of make that stand out. I guess I could have put one maybe down here in the lower corner or something. Of course, Prada has theirs right here in the front in one of these triangles. Anyway, sometimes the best thing to do is not to bring attention to the fact that the pattern's not centered, and that makes it all kind of look a little better. Now, before we put the binding on, you do want to make sure that all of your seams are even. So if you have any part of the seam sticking out anywhere, you want to go ahead and trim that back. Of course, any threads you're going to trim back. And to give you an idea of the inside, you can see how nice and clean and tight that inside is. Okay. Doing the bag this way is really beautiful. It makes that lining absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna go and just take my scissors and clean up any of these edges just to make sure they're even. You can see like right here, the lining sticks out just a little bit further than the main part. I wanna make sure that there's none of that. You know, maybe at the bottom you have a little bit of that. And then I'll show you how to put the binding on. I put one side of the binding on, and you can see here how pretty it looks. It really came out good. And so I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, I've shown you a couple different ways to put binding on in the past. I think it was maybe the Marc Jacobs bag. We did like a double binding. We've done a French seam. We've kind of done a couple different things. This time I'm just going to do a single fold. Meaning I'm just going to take this, go ahead and fold it on like this and stitch it. Now, you see I have double-sided tape on here, and I'm using 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. Just kind of hold it in place as I go around. It's most important to me to make sure that it looks good on the front. Not that it doesn't need to look good here on the side, but obviously you're going to see it along this front edge first before you see anything else. So I have, again, 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. I'm going to peel the backing off one edge, and I'm going to place it on the front of the bag. I want to do, this is 1 inch. We have a 1/4 inch here. That's what we're trying to hide. Okay, so we're trying to hide the stitching, and obviously we're trying to hide the raw edge. I want it to have a 1/2 inch overlap, and the reason why we cut this 1 inch is so that when we did that and we kind of squeezed it between, we have a 1/2 inch on each side. Okay, now you can measure a 1/2 inch in. I think what I did over here is I kind of followed the pattern of the bag, okay? So I could see this much here of this triangle, okay, about 1/4 of that triangle. So I just made sure going down, I could see 1/4 of the triangle all the way down, okay, to the bottom. If I measure, and let's say 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch is right about where it is here, and then it's way over here on the next, like maybe my seam wasn't straight, it's going to look crooked because of the pattern. So kind of keep that in mind. You really want to follow the pattern, do the 1/2 inch, but follow the pattern more than anything so that it doesn't look off. So I am just going to leave a little bit here at the top, figure out about where the 1/4 of an inch is, or excuse me, where the 1/2 inch is. And then once I determine that, I am just going to kind of wrap this around, make sure that that looks okay on both sides. What we're trying to do is to make sure this is folding in half here. Okay, so we can catch both sides at one time. And now that I can see on the bag how much of this little triangle, I'm going to make sure that's how much I see of the little triangle all the way around. Okay, and don't pull it, just kind of lay it down. I'm going to go around the bottom edge. Okay, so you can see how much triangle I have both here and here. And then I'm going to come up the top. Now, the good thing about black, using black, is that if something happens and you don't catch the stitch on the back side, you can go back over it and you're really not going to be able to tell. You can do that without taking it apart and leaving holes in your project. Okay. And then the good thing about leaving one edge raw, or both edges raw, is when you turn this over, if for some reason you have more on the back than you do on the front and it looks silly, you can take your scissors and you can actually trim it. As long as you don't hack at it, you just kind of let your scissor blades go ahead and, you know, do the trimming all the way around. It should be fine. So now that I'm going to double check visually to make sure that that looks okay. Down and around, and everything looks good. So now I'm going to peel the backing off the other side of the double-sided tape, and then we will fold this over. And again, I want to make sure that these look about even. I'm even going to press them together. Okay. If I end up with a little more on the back, it's not as big of a deal. I could theoretically go ahead and cut it off if I need to. But I'm going to do the same thing and just kind of make sure that everything in here looks pretty even with my pattern. Now, I'm going to do the sides first because we have a curve here to deal with. So let me do this side as well. Make sure this is kind of matched up. And come all the way down. And now when I get to this part, I'm going to go ahead and pull the bottom up first, okay? So I'm going to take that bottom and go ahead and push that up. Once it's up, I'm going to just kind of take the sides here and just carefully go ahead and push those in. We don't want any tucks in there, and you can see by doing that, that's worked out pretty good, okay? So now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to kind of take it from each end, from the middle, go through, da-da-da, and that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to go ahead and move the camera and we will stitch this on. And again, I'm going to stitch it from the right side, meaning I'm going to stitch it starting here and then I'm going to go all the way around. Now, if you need to keep an alcohol pad nearby to go ahead and just, you know, you're stitching through double-sided tape. So if you need to wipe that needle periodically, make sure you keep some alcohol pads near you to do that. I am going to do that. This machine does tend to get a little more gummed up than my Consew, and so I just want to make sure I don't have any problems. I'm going to start out by cutting off the extra. I have my seam guide set to 1/2 inch. So before I get to this edge, I'm going to go ahead and cut off this extra. I don't cut it off until I make it all the way around, just in case I need to adjust. See, all that looks good. Okay, all the way up to the top. And then on the inside, that's what we have. Make sure everything caught, which it did. Now, if I decide that I want to go ahead and cut some of this back a little bit, right here, let me zoom you out a little bit more. You can do that just by, go ahead and, of course you have double-sided tape on here, so just kind of peel this back a little bit. I'm gonna move you over just a tad. I'll go to the table and do this. Just gonna kind of peel this back. And it looks like right here it looks pretty good, so I'm gonna just try to get enough so it's up. Take a really sharp pair of scissors so I can put the edge of the scissors right here where it starts getting kind of fat. And without doing this, just kind of hold those scissors open and slide all the way up. So I'm going to start here. And I'm just going to stick the edge of my scissors in and just very carefully trying not to move the blades too much, but I'm having to, so there we go. Okay, so that cut that back some, and then I can do the same thing on the other side. Maybe you could do a little bit here, not too much. And it may be that it's fine too. You know, you don't have to worry too much about it being perfect, because obviously it's a little difficult. And I might just leave that one because that one I'm having a hard time getting the double-sided tape up. Okay, so there we go. So we are now done with the bag. I mean, that's all there is to it. As far as stitching, again, no closure, so we don't have to worry about that. Prada bag did not have purse feet, so we didn't put any on. And we're going to take a look at the bag and go from there. Look at our cost to see how much we save by doing this. So here it is, our very own version of the small Symbole tote by Prada. The finished bag is, as you can see, amazingly gorgeous, right? It is absolutely beautiful. We obviously have this beautiful binding on the side. This is our textured black. Of course, I showed you all of the different finishes we have in this actual Prada-like version of our faux leather. We do have rolled handles. As I mentioned, they are fairly small. So if you want larger handles, you're just gonna cut them a little bit bigger. The inside of this bag is really beautiful. You have just a zipper pocket and a slip pocket and nothing else. Now we really tried to copy the original tote with this bag. So what that means is, of course, no purse feet, like I mentioned before, no key fob, basically no hardware. You see no hardware on the outside of this bag. So it's very minimalistic in the hardware department, and the fabric just kind of speaks for itself. So the only advice that I would have for you is that if you do want larger handles, go ahead and do that, because these are fairly short. This would not fit on my shoulder. The other thing is I think it's a large enough bag that purse feet would be very beneficial for this. So the final thing that I want to do is see how much we spent on these materials. As a reminder, the inspiration bag retails for $3,500 right now. So here's what we spent. We used 1 roll of Maine faux leather, $24.99. We used half of a roll of accent faux leather, which was $12.49. We used a little bit of hardware, which is basically a zipper, a little bit of zipper and a zipper pull for our zipper pocket, $1. We used 1 yard of lining, $16.99, 1 yard of interfacing, which is $10. The stabilizer we used came to about $12.68. And then our spools of thread are $12.99, but of course we didn't use a whole spool. We have plenty left over for another project. So that comes out to a total of $91.49, which is only 3%, it's actually less than 3% of the cost of the original Prada bag. So just a reminder that you can get links to the cutting chart and materials in the video description, and that almost all of these products are available in the Simply Classic store. So if you like this video, we encourage you to watch our other tutorials with free bag patterns. We have a playlist on YouTube and we'll be linking it in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see your takes on the Prada Symbole tote. Make sure to post your makes in the Simply Classic bag making community on Facebook. If you aren't already a member, make sure to join us, and the link is in the description below. Please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more bag making tutorials. Don't forget to tune in to the Bag Makers Workroom live stream every Thursday. And if you have a designer bag you'd like to recreate, let me know in the comments. I'll see what I can do. So until next time, everybody, happy sewing.